let us begin. Ask away. No questions? Cool.
I have a question.
There it is.
I had to think. I was like, wait, what was I thinking of earlier? um, so do you have like a preferred method for going from a black and white rendered painting to making that color? Is there like, other than just using like color layers and building off of that, are there any other like secret tips?
Um, that is the technique. I use color layers and uh, like overlay and what have you. Like I use everything to just make my colors more epic. But yeah, I don't do anything special. It's just I just use the colors and then I just fix them in the sense that I go ahead and paint over it. So I use the color layer as a way to kind of get me started, but I don't use it as a way to um, like I don't finish with just color layers. I just do more than that. Okay, and but
Yeah.
other than that, like there is no other tricks and tips. And I use the color layer method because it is the most reliable one. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
meaning that what I tend to do is that when I was using overlays and all these fun stuff that I was learning when I was going to school, I discovered that overlays just aren't reliable. Like they get really weird really quickly, and I wasn't sure why. But as I started using color layer, I discovered why. It became very obvious to me what was going on. And the reason why is because overlays also affect value, and so color layers don't affect value as much. They affect saturation, they affect the color, but they barely touch the values.
Hmm.
So I'll give you an example. See, let's say I'm painting a thing. The other approach is the approach you're about to see. I just paint straight up in color.
Yeah.
Um, and sometimes that's better because it just cuts through all the layers. But I always consider like it's juggling, right? So you're juggling different facets. So imagine that you have design as one thing to juggle, lighting is another, color is another, values, you know. So the less things you can juggle, the more you can manage and the more you won't screw up. And so for me, I can juggle design and values really well. So then for the last year or so, I've been trying to practice designing, uh, what you call it? I've been trying to design and color. But that's three things: design, color, and values.
Mm-hmm.
Because I could do it independently, but as I started putting them together, it was really challenging. Not as challenging as if I had no experience in good values. Having good values makes it much easier. Okay, so let's say I have this design, I want to color it. Okay, so there's a few things that you have to understand. So the spectrum of color, the way that it works in Photoshop, the way you should think about it is that certain values have certain values. I'm sorry, certain colors live in certain values, and if you know what those are, it helps. So what I'm going to do is there's a light value, make it lighter, a mid-tone value, and a dark value. Okay. So most colors, as you would suspect, would live in the mostly mid-tone range. Okay. And then the only two colors that are an exception to this is yellow and purple.
Hmm.
Yellow lives mostly in the bright values, like lighter values, and then purple lives mostly in the darker values. Okay? So
Hmm.
knowing that fact, we can be predictive. So meaning that if I grab red, then red will look the most impressive right in this round, range, right? If we
Yeah.
do it here, it's going to feel washed out. And if we do it here, it's going to feel uh, like burgundy. It's going to feel very dark. Obviously, this value needs to be a little bit darker just to match the red that I was going for, but you get the point, right?
Hmm.
That's what I'm saying, like mostly in the mid range. Same with blue. If we pick like a blue, it should look blue here in the midtones, but if it's washed up here and it's like super dark there. Yeah?
Yeah.
And if we go to purple, right, you'll see that this kind of reads as purple, but this actually reads, no, I think this is good. This is maybe too dark for the purple. But this, in the light value, it doesn't work as well.
Yeah.
Okay? But then yellow, you'll see, works really nice in the light values.
Oh wow. Yeah.
And then it works really badly in other values. So
Hmm.
so then that means like if I wanted to paint on this guy over here and I wanted to put red on him, and I mean like good old saturated red, right? Then it makes more
Yeah.
sense to put it on the top here because it's like a more of a mid-tone dark value that I think was perfect. And then it might make sense for his um, the rest of his helmet to be like a light blue or something, like some sort of like cold steel.
Hmm.
And I'll just splash it in there. I'll leave some of that gray in there, right? And see, it's working out okay. And then we can like add some greens in there too, some light greens, just to add some color variation. And you can color
Hmm.
pick the color layer. You can color pick that color and it'll grab it, which is nice.
Oh, okay. That's good.
Yeah, because with overlay, if you color pick, it doubles down, which is not
Yeah.
which is not ideal. And so you can see how having a good sense of understanding of what I can get out of my colors, I can control it better. And then once you have it laid in, then you have to go in there and actually paint it and correct it and start making it nice and tidy,
Nice.
you know.
Yeah, I mean, even that, like, those three, like, little different samples of values and experimenting with that on a color layer, that will be really helpful just to
Yeah,
try and figure out how that layer functions.
totally. So what I
So,
would actually do too is like grab the different values that you have on your character, swatch them out, and then do the color layer on top of them so you can see
oh,
so you don't have to necessarily experiment directly on your thing. You can just experiment on the values. And then
yeah,
you can color pick literally from there and work from that.
nice.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Question on my end.
Go for it.
Um, yeah, so like let's say you graduated or you're doing freelance. Is it is it recommended, like let's say if you want to focus on going for a company, it doesn't matter how big or small, it's just whatever company it is it better to move there to be closer to the company, or does it not matter as long as you have like the talent the company is willing to, like, are they going to hire people that are closer to them with the same level of talent, or like what would you recommend in terms of that?
Okay. I usually have you guys think about this in a practical sense. Because then whenever you ask these types of questions later down the line, you can answer them. Right? There'll be more of these types of questions I'm sure you'll have as time goes on. So um, what I mean by this is that, like, ask yourself a simple question. Let's say you own a company, okay?
Mhm.
and you can hire um, anybody. And what you find is that there is an artist in, like, that is in a different country that paints really well and does really well that you want to hire. Okay. And they are not willing to move. Okay. And you
Mhm.
need somebody to be in-house. All right. So if you're a company, you need somebody in-house, and that person that you think is perfect is not willing to move, what do you do? Well, you can't force them to move, so you would have to either pay them more money or or try to negotiate with them. And if that doesn't work out, then in most cases, then the job won't happen.
Mhm.
And so then, let's say the same scenario, this person is willing to move, then you have to then think, okay, I have to pay for the visa, I have to pay for uh, transportation, I have to pay for housing probably for the first month or two to get them located here.
Mhm.
So then that's some added cost, but you're willing to do it if you're willing to move, right?
Yeah.
And then now let's take the same situations, either or, and just add one new variable. There's someone that is local that is just as good, right?
Yeah.
So the answer has become much easier. You just hire a person that's local,
Yeah.
right? So there's no conundrum there. It's just like, just think about it from like, if you were owning a company and these were the circumstances, like, what would you do? It's not a mystery. The companies think the same way as if you're very practically thinking, you know?
Yeah.
Um, Now, obviously, this is a broad statement, but it's generally true, okay? So will absolutely, the larger studios, oh, this is dope, using just the hotkeys. Just need to get better at it, though. The larger studios are are more willing to take risks like this. But smaller studios might not be able to afford it. So you have to always consider all the different variables that studios have to go through to hire someone like you if you're abroad, you know?
Yeah.
And you have to accept that fate. So, like, if you can't move, then that's a thing. Like, you just gonna have to deal with that. But if you can, then you might have more options. And if you're local, then you have even more options to those studios. You understand what I'm saying? Like, it is pretty straightforward. There's nothing um, magical about the answer here. Okay, but what I'm
Okay.
trying to do is to try to give you the tools to think about this practically. So when you encounter this problem again, you know,
Mhm.
you can, like, think about it objectively. All
Yeah,
right.
thank you.
Yeah, because I get it. Like, you would like to think that maybe there is some sort of magical scenario, but no, it's really simple. Like, people, when they have to spend their money, they have to think about all these variables. They can't just go and just bring anybody and everybody. And some studios actually do that, right? Some studios will just be spending their money like nothing, like there's no tomorrow, and then they sometimes just shut down just as fast because they were reckless. Um,
Yeah.
so be cautious of being hired by a studio that's totally, like, okay with doing all that stuff, not because they're a bad studio. They're just showing symptoms of potentially reckless spending. Unless they're like a large studio that they have more practice in this and they've done this quite a bit. Like Blizzard's really good at bringing foreigners over. You know, so I wouldn't
Yeah.
worry about, like, a company like Blizzard or Riot, like, hiring you and bringing you over. Like, you don't have to worry. They got that stuff figured out. I mean, you should always be prepared, right? I always tell people, keep working on your personal work because you never know. You'll never know when you'll need to leave. And that doesn't mean that, like, whether they fire you, it just also means just, like, if you just don't want to work there anymore, if you keep working on a portfolio, you have options. You can
Yeah.
leverage that. Sound good? Makes sense?
Yeah. Yeah, makes sense. Thank you.
Cool. Cool, cool, cool. Great question. Any other questions?
Um, I guess I have a question, and this might just be like, up to the individual themselves, but is it typically better for new like concept artists, people who are very new to the industry, to work for a studio and then try freelance later, or have you seen people be successful at doing the opposite?
Yeah, you could do either or. There's always an example in either or in this scenario, right?
Yeah.
So I wouldn't stress too much about it. Like
Okay.
just know that if you want to do freelance, that you can totally do that. And if you want to do work from work for a studio, you can totally do that too. If you want to go from working at a studio then to freelance, that's cool. If you want to go from um, freelance to studio, that's also cool. Like
Hmm.
I've seen people do both. I've done both. I've tried both, and I prefer working from home,
Yeah.
especially nowadays because I have my babies and my family. It's growing, and I like to be around them. Like
Right.
even if I am working, it's nice that I'm like there and they can see me and like talk with me and stuff. You know, just recently it's a little bit harder because of the baby, but it's still nice that I'm here and helping out when I can. Versus like I would have to go back to work, after
Yeah.
like a week,
Yeah.
which was true for I think the other two babies. I had to work,
Right.
but I don't have to do that with this new little one. I can stay home.
No. Yeah.
And so
Um,
I've had friends who hated the studio life when they tried it, and I had friends who loved the studio life, and hate freelance. So it's just
mhm.
like you got to kind of figure out what kind of personality you are. I think if you are more, what is it? Like if you're more, like you need to talk to people and stuff often,
Mhm.
which is true about me. Right? Like I need to like talk, but I get kind of that from talking with you guys, right? And then I also get that from, like I said earlier, like my family. Like I have people that I engage with. I don't really need to engage too much in the outside world, but I do at the same time because it's nice to talk with some of my old friends.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to it, there's some people that aren't like that. They just rather just work and just stay quiet and just stay in their pajamas, right?
Yeah.
And that's totally fine. Like you just got to know the kind of personality you are. Like I had friends who thought they would love studio, then they got jobs at like good studios, and then they just kind of were like, this is overwhelming. Like they have to show up, they have to do this, they have to do that, and they're just kind of like, I don't know, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. What are like some of the like biggest like approach differences to getting freelance work as opposed to getting a job at a studio? I imagine studio is much more like in line with just getting a job, but
No, they're similar, but it's just how it works is different, right?
yeah.
So you still have deadlines, still have to get it done. It says when you work at a studio, the deadlines and accountability is very obvious. Like you're there, they can see you.
Right.
And then when you're working from home, the accountability is self-reliant. Like you have to make sure that you're doing the work, that is asked of you.
Right.
And then getting work via freelance and it's the same. You just got to network. You got to go out there. You got to talk to people. You know, um,
Yeah.
do stuff like that. Because if you don't do any of that, then you'll have a harder time, as you would suspect.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's nothing too crazy to try to do either. You just got to ask yourself which one would you prefer. I'm always a fan of choosing, what you think would be more, um, like more fun versus just what you think will pay the bills. Paying the bills is
Mm-hmm.
important, but having, fulfillment is more important. And the best way to find that fulfillment is choosing a path and just try to find it and get there. Like I feel
Yeah.
very fulfilled as an instructor, like especially when I see my students, thank me and like, grow outside of the class and start doing well. That's really great. It's really, really awesome. And the more and more that happens, the better. Basically, the the more fulfilled I get. But then at the same time, like I also have other things that fulfill me, like I mentioned earlier, being with the kiddos. That's always great. Being with the wife, and then hanging out with friends. And the way that I structured my life before was not letting me do any of that either. I was working too much, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and not having enough time. Time was to me the most valuable resource.
Yeah.
And so then I decided to switch what I was trying to make. I was instead of trying to make more money, I was just trying to make more time.
Mm.
And so hope that
Yeah.
helps you
Yeah,
out.
no, that's a good insight. Thank you.
Yeah. But I'd say there's no like the biggest difference between freelancers are the most obvious ones, right? And
Yeah.
so but getting jobs via freelance and just work, the differences are very clear to me. And one of the things that you would also need to understand about freelance is that when you do freelance, it can come and go. Like you could be working on a project and they can tell you that you're going to be there for a month. Then they decide, nah, it's all right. We're only going to keep you for a week. That's totally
Yeah.
a thing. But then
Yeah.
there's also scenarios where if you are working at a studio, that's never a guarantee either, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there is more stability. There's at least like some sort of sense of that you're going to stay there a little bit longer, right? And
Right.
and so that's something to keep in mind with the difference between freelance and contractor work. It's contractor work is a little bit more stable.
Yeah. Yeah, no, my boyfriend's actually a freelance filmmaker and
Okay.
videographer, so I've had a bit of a secondhand experience with how that can be.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So you get it, and
Yeah.
but the stability also comes at a cost because then they don't pay you nearly as much as if you're a
Yeah.
freelancer,
Yeah.
and you don't have that freedom as much as you would like. Some studios are starting to evolve past this type of like old school thinking of how people should work. So that's
Yeah.
nice. But uh, there's still a lot of studios that don't think that way. They just don't want you to get down, put your head down and work.
Mm-hmm.
And so to that, I always just say, um, even like, okay, just so I can end this question or answer, just even the most epic companies in the industry um, might have things that you just don't like. I have friends who worked at Blizzard that don't like working at Blizzard. I have friends who work at Riot that don't like working at Riot, you know?
Yeah.
But then I also have friends who work at Blizzard that love working at Blizzard. And then I have friends who work at Riot that love working at Riot, you know?
Yeah.
I know people of all sorts is what I'm trying to get at. The grass is
Mm-hmm.
always greener. Like I said before, I know people who are freelancers who love freelancing, and I know people who hate freelancing. It's just
Yeah.
uh, me personally. There's only been like maybe two jobs that I've ever had that I truly did not like at all. You know,
Yeah.
and that's very few. I've worked a lot of different jobs, and only two of them I didn't think they were any good. But
Yeah.
I left. I was in a position to leave, so I just left in both scenarios.
Yeah. It's always good to strive for whatever makes you happy.
hmm
So,
I'm big on that one. Show.
yeah. All right. Well, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I hear
Uh,
somebody.
so I have another question.
Yeah,
Um,
go for it.
the burnout. So how how would you recommend dealing with when you have like artist burnout, basically, from like overworking or, the crunch time and things like that?
Give me a scenario so I can be better about
Um,
answering this question.
just for example, uh, like I've done like 13-hour uh, days at a time, like for a couple of days because of crunch time sometimes.
Hmm.
Um, and then you just feel like, I guess you get kind of a little bit like depressed because you feel like you're missing out a little bit in life. Like you got that itch that you need to scratch a little bit.
Got it.
Um, so, and then you try to draw or whatever, and then it's not happening properly no matter how much you try. So, and that could be like for like a week or more, you try to focus and stuff, but it just doesn't come out right.
Sure.
Um, so how would you deal with that better?
Well, there's a lot of variables at play that I would need to know more about. Um, so the first thing would be whenever you feel burnt out, um, yeah, you just need to take breaks, you know? You need to take more breaks during your work. And maybe during those breaks, draw something for yourself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And because it's like if you treat your, I'll sit down while I discuss. If you treat your mind as a muscle and it's like you're overworking your muscle, yeah, it could be detrimental, you know?
Yeah.
Um, but like being overworked and all that stuff is a symptom of just like the industry. So you just need to find ways to not overwork. And the way that I got past that was just be a faster painter. I would always like stay only an hour or two later at work because
Hmm.
especially as a concept artist, I didn't really have to be there as much. And I would just paint and draw whatever, right? And then I would just look at the my colleagues and they would still be working. I'd be like, all right, see you guys, you know? I'll just leave.
Yeah.
I would just leave because it's like, yeah, sure, you want to get the project done, but it's like I'll do what I need to do and then I'll move on. I need rest, I need to sleep, and but like I would do like lunch sketches, I would do like morning sketches before I would get started, even so I would find time. You just got to find time. And so another point I would want to make is that there's a difference between the this elite group of people who are really good at what they do
Hmm.
and just people that are great at what they do or even good at what they do. And the difference is that the people who are masters or excellent at what they do, they do it even when they don't feel like doing it
Yeah.
because that's the difference. And the way to solve that problem, that if you don't feel like doing it, is to just get started. And and if you just start, you'll start doing it. And if even if it's bad, you know a simple truth, which is the more you do something, the better you get at it, regardless if you feel bad about it.
Yeah.
And that's just a fact. You're not hurting yourself by doing it. You just feel crappy because you wish it was better or you had more time, but that's irrelevant. All that's irrelevant. The fact is if you don't do anything at all, that's actually worse.
Yeah.
And so knowing that fact, so even if you only put an hour in a day, you'll feel better about yourself. You won't feel as depressed because you're like, well, at least I'm putting in an hour sketch. And maybe draw something that takes no effort. Just get better at something you're already good at, you know?
Yeah.
And then the third point, and the final point I'll make is to the point of, well, whenever you do draw something and you feel bad about it, like you don't feel like anything's coming out of it, that's not a product of burnout. That's a product of you're trying to learn something new, but you're not studying anything new.
Yeah.
It's kind of like what I was demonstrating earlier with Leo, right? Like I was
Hmm.
saying, like if you just keep shooting from the hip, but you're shooting blanks, then what were you expecting? Right? I always do that how far is the Earth to the moon analogy. as a demonstration. Have I done it with you guys in this class? I think I did.
Yeah, I think you did. Yeah.
Yeah, where I would ask you a question, which was how far is the Earth to the moon, and you would not know. And I would ask
Yep.
you it several times, and you would not know. Nothing would have changed. And I compare that to painting something that you don't know the answer to, right? And
Mhm.
the answer to figuring out how to paint, or I'm sorry, to how far the moon and Earth is to actually Google it or look it up, research, you know?
Yeah.
And then the same is true with art. You just got to research more on your free time as well. Like, don't just paint. Try to learn something new. And spend like only like, half an hour every day, and do it now. Don't wait till you're burnt out. Build that habit today, you know?
Yeah.
Because because you'll get more and more, you'll start to get more and more good habits formed in your daily activities, right? You'll, instead of checking your Facebook every 5 minutes, you'll be wanting to paint something or watch a YouTube video that's going to teach you more about painting, you know? Instead
Yeah.
of, playing a video game for countless amounts of hours, you're going to be researching for countless amounts of hours, you know? Just transition that, that mentality and do it on days where you do have time. Because if you don't do it then, it's compounded when you are overworked.
Yeah.
It's like amplified how much you can't get done, right? And
Yeah.
so if you can create a good habit from the beginning, you'll find a little bit more uh, happiness when those days come, and they will come, and they will not stop coming. Okay? So it's best to just be prepared for that versus um, not prepared.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, totally. Oh, no. There you go. Just delete this. Any other questions?
Mm, yes, I have one.
Yeah, go for it.
Uh, Maybe you answered that on the previous questions, but I just want like to be sure. I can be distracted very easily when I work, and like I tried not having internet, but like it's not because I don't have internet that I will not get distracted by anything else. And it's very hard for me to work like for more than an hour on what I do without being distracted and willing to do something else. Even though like I can push my work like for several hours, yet I will still want to do something else instead of like studying or doing that can really improve my heart. So maybe like you have, I don't know, like advice or like something
Yeah,
I should
sure.
change.
You just gotta do it. You just gotta sit down for longer and longer periods of time. So if you
Yeah.
can't, if you have a hard time staying on task for 30 minutes, that's going to suck, man. And so what you have to do is find ways where you can sit down for 30 minutes and make sure that you can, right? And that's why a timer is really useful. So set a timer, say I can't do anything for 30 minutes, no matter what I want to do, right? Just to stay focused. And you'll find that that focus is going to be helpful, even if that's all you can do, right? 30 minutes is pretty powerful if you're not distracted by anything else. Okay? And so
Mm.
then the next quest is then bring that up to 45 minutes, you know? Add like 15
Mm.
minutes to this time now. And then once you've done that, then add um, another 15 minutes. Try to do an hour, complete 60 minutes. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Just go like little by little.
Yeah, and then I think like after an hour, like you don't have to go any longer than that. You could definitely take a break after an hour or 2 hours of just complete and utter focus. but like go like build up to it. Treat it like a video game, right? Like in a video game, at least with good video games, they don't start you off with the most difficult and challenging hurdles, right? Like if you were to imagine this is like a rabbit quest game where you have to hunt and kill rabbits, okay? Um, you go and you start the game, you know, and then in the game's like, hey, you know, we want you to just kill 10 rabbits and bring me back their pelts. And you go and kill 10 rabbits, bring back the pelts. He's like, great, here's some experience. He's like, now I want you to go kill 20 rabbits. You're like, all right, I can do that. I did 10, I get it. And they say, all right, now you've done that. It's like, well, can you kill the little rabbit mini boss? All right, that sounds a little bit more challenging. And on the way, you have to kill rabbits to get to him, but you've already have experience, right, murdering rabbits, so it's not too bad. And then after you've done that, then he's like, you know, I want you to go to the rabbit hive and kill the queen, right, and so forth and so on. And then 2 months later, in the same rabbit quest video game that I'm hypothetically creating, you're in a 40-man raid, right, ready to kill the rabbit gods, right? But at that point, you're really experienced, and you've got all the equipment. You have rabbit uh, deterrent armor, you know, like rabbit resistant armor. You hear what I'm saying? Like you're more prepared.
Yeah.
But if the game was like the first time you booted it up, it's like, all right, you have to fight the rabbit god, and you're like, what? You would totally turn off the game. It'd be too difficult, right? And so if you treat your progress that way, like if you treat it like, well, if you're trying to go hardcore parkour every single time, you know, you're more likely to
Mm.
fail. And I don't mean fail like as in like fail to do well. I'm saying you will fail to stay motivated or stay consistent. Okay? But if you
Yeah, I
build
see.
but if you build up to it, then you can make it more consistent. And eventually spending 2-3 hours won't be a problem because you would have earned it. Make sense?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, because if you try to do it all hard right off the bat, some people are like that, right? Like some people can totally just do that, you know, can stay super focused. And I'm one of those people. I'm really good at just like, if I want to learn something, I will just learn it. You know, there is no barrier. Like, hey, I want to learn this thing, and I will just dig the deepest, darkest parts of the internet and the world to find the information that I need to have, you know? And that's why I accelerate my growth really well. But that's why I tell people, like, that's all you got to do too. And it may sound very challenging to stay super focused, but it is super simple, you know? If you're looking for some magic voodoo that I had that you guys don't have, um, really don't have it, other than I was just a little bit more consistent, you know, which is not to say that you guys aren't. You guys are still starting out. I'm just saying as a real sound advice and insight I'm trying to get to you is if you can stay consistent, you will get really good. And when you get really good, then you'll get addicted to get better, right? And then it's a exponential type of thing, right? It gets larger and larger. That number gets bigger and bigger the more you do it because you get better and better. Have you ever played a video game before? Of course you
Yeah.
have. Okay, what's your favorite video game that you've played?
Uh, World of Warcraft.
So let me ask you, in World of Warcraft, do you only spend like 10, 20 minutes in it and then you get distracted and you want to do something else?
Mm, now, yes, but no. When I was younger, no.
No, right? I mean like when you were really into it.
Yeah, yeah,
So that demonstrates that you have the ability to focus, you know?
yeah.
You just the problem is you don't like to focus on things that are hard.
Yeah,
And
that makes
that's
sense.
and that's the difference. Video games are designed to be challenging in small bites. It's a gradual growth, right? And video games are tailored to let you, uh, basically they're designed to keep you playing, right? And so there's a little bit of there's a good balance of challenge, right, and reward, meaning that there's enough challenge that you feel like, okay, this is exciting, but it's not so challenging that you cannot do it, you know?
Yeah.
And real life doesn't have that like level up system type of thing. There's no like experience bar that you can see that right now that if you just do, grind another 2 hours, then you reach level 3 artist. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
let me explain that does exist though. Okay? That there is a level bar and there is like you are and can be a level whatever artist, right? It's just not, there's no interface. You understand? And the best
Yeah.
way to
That will
find this
be very
out,
helpful.
yeah, the best way to think about this is just to look at your work from the past. Like, how have you gotten better since uh, you were like 5 years ago? Is your work today better than it was 5 years ago?
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah, see, so you're clearly leveling up, but you just didn't notice, right? And same thing with like, video games. Like the thing about video games is that when you play World of Warcraft and you get to level 60, let's say, or whatever it's at now, like 100 or 110, right? You actually had to work hard to get there. You just didn't know it.
Mhm.
Like some of these guys have been like my dad, for instance. He loves that game. He's been playing since the game's inception, like since it's been out, right? And he has like 10 level 100s or something crazy, and they're all decked out and all that stuff. But like he plays like 3 to 4 hours every day for the last decade, you know?
Yeah.
And so like he's really good at World of Warcraft. At least good at the PvE. I destroy him in PvP. But like I remember when I played World of Warcraft, I felt the same way. I was like, hey, playing World of Warcraft, I was getting really good at it. I was destroying fools, but because the way that I was getting good was I was spending countless amounts of hours. I was like watching video tutorials on like how to get certain items and how to fight better,
Yeah.
And just like I do with art, what happened is when I went to art school, I just said, what if I like apply the same kind of work ethic that I had for this stupid game to just anything else?
Yeah.
And then that's how I'm teaching you guys today. That's how it came to be. You know?
Yeah. It totally makes sense.
Yeah. So my strategy then, like I was saying before, just to reiterate, is to basically step by step, you know, little by little, level yourself up in terms of how much time you can focus. Treat everything like a little bit of like a game. Give yourself small tasks, and those small tasks will eventually lead up to a larger strength.
Okay.
Yeah, does that help?
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, totally. Any other questions, friendos?
I think I have a question, but I'm not sure. I feel like it's a stupid question.
Oh, I like stupid.
It's yeah, it's about the learning process.
Uh-huh.
Because I have
No,
used
no,
to
it's too
do
stupid.
schedules.
No, never mind.
Okay.
Just kidding.
I have used to do like schedules, what to do weekly, and I would change them every week. But then I found that I was like, one day I'm like, I look what I have to do today, and I feel I don't feel like doing this, and then I do something for the next day, and then I feel, is this really a good approach, or maybe it's better to like study what I feel at the moment is most interesting to me. Do you think there's like it would boost kind of the process of learning if it's like random, or if it would be actually worse to do that?
Um, yes and no. I don't think that's a stupid question. Yeah, Leo, I agree. It's a good one. So it goes back to, and I think I told Leah the answer to this for last class, which was stay on task until you've learned the thing you're trying to learn. Okay? Meaning
Yeah, I
that,
was thinking actually something more broad, like perspective and anatomy.
oh wait, hold on just a second. My wife needs me to help her open this. She's holding the baby. It's all right, little dude. It's all right, little dude. Oh, my little baby. Um, so wait, so explain that again. So you're saying like something a little more broader, like perspective. What do you mean by that? Like you should be learning perspective every day?
No, I mean like, for example, day 1 I learn anatomy, day 2 I learn perspective, day 3 composition and things like that.
Well, you mean having a schedule to learn these things?
Yeah.
No, I think the best strategy is to learn whatever is relative to your problems now. Um, for instance, let me think of a good analogy for this. So let's say, let me think about this. Let me try to think of a really good analogy that could really capture the essence of what I'm going to say. So that way you can see the framework. So I think the best analogy would be like building something. Okay. Let's say you're building some IKEA furniture, right? And what you're trying to do to build this furniture, like the first step that you do while building this furniture is you're like, well, I think I need to put together the legs first, and then put together the base, and then put like you build some sort of rigid schedule to build this table. But maybe the reality is you don't even know how to use the Allen wrench, right? And so while you're trying to put this stuff together, you don't even know the basic tools of like using a wrench. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So the whole process becomes that much more difficult to you. Oh, my little baby. Here you go, little dude. Yeah, okay. Um, like, so it's probably better for you to stop before you build the rest of the table, right? To learn how to use that one tool, okay? And then once you've learned that tool, then you can go back and try to build the table. And then, but once you've built like as you start building, but then maybe you don't know how to nail in a nail with a hammer. Yeah, let's stop using the IKEA furniture idea because there's instructions. They tell you step by step how to do it. Let's say you're just trying to build like a table on your own, just in general, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So then this analogy makes more sense. So then like if you don't even know how to hammer a nail, then like, the whole process becomes even that much more difficult, right? So it's probably best to just go sit down and practice hammering a nail at that moment because it's relevant. Contextually it's relevant to what you need to do. Okay, and then as you start to put the table together, you realized that your Allen wrench skills or your screwdriving skills aren't as good as that you thought they were. So then instead of going back and hammering the nail or moving on to the third step, which would be, let's say, primering the wood or whatever. I don't know. I don't know anything about carpeting. But you get what I'm saying? Like you say, like, instead of going to that third thing, I need to go back to the first thing because I realize the first thing is still not a sharpened skill and it's holding me back. Does that make sense? And so,
Yeah.
because if you apply this now to art, it's like saying, okay, I'm going to do anatomy because I know anatomy is important. Okay, great. So you work on your anatomy, you learn some stuff, and then you move on to perspective, and then you learn some stuff. But then when you apply it to your work, you're like, yeah, I know my anatomy is still pretty bad. Like I still need to learn more anatomy, you know?
Yeah.
And let's say the third day, the schedule that you've created was to work on shapes, right? So
Yeah.
you see how that's a problem. It's like, well, no, I actually should just go back to anatomy because that's still a big issue. Like before I jump into shapes, I should just like learn how to draw an arm. You know, and then
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then as you're drawing the arm, then you might be like, well, maybe I do need to learn the shapes because the shapes can maybe simplify these forms. So now it's organically taking you to shapes as it will, right? You'll organically transition to the things you'll need to learn, but make sure that you've learned a thing, and then that way when you fail, right, and you make a mistake, you can take a look back at what it could be. You can take a step back and look at what you can change, what you can try, and just trust that if you keep trying different things, you will learn. You will get there. It takes time, right? I was doing a demo to someone because they were asking about programming, specifically in Unreal, and I was explaining to them, you first got to learn the language, right? Because that's something that I've learned. It's like you got to understand what the hell they're trying to say. And it's like once you've learned the language, then you could start practicing some core principles, which would be like coding, like the actual logic and algorithms, right? And that to me became a real eye-opener when I started learning programming. It was like, yeah, it's about algorithms, getting that math, figuring out that math, yo. You know? And just learning how things work, super powerful, you know?
Yeah, that's actually really nice.
Yeah, so for instance, I'm trying to learn coding, and I can show you some examples. Let me boot it up. I saw this new software, Zoom. Someone's going to interview me this weekend, and they're going to use Zoom, and they're saying, yeah, it's dope. I'm like, what? What's Zoom? And I tried it out just during the break, and I'm like, yeah, it's kind of dope. And I want to test it out with them, see if it works. But you can, it's kind of like Google Hangouts where you can see everybody else, but apparently it's like better, it's a better, what you call it, latency. But we'll see. Because GoToMeetings is super powerful.
Yeah, I really like this website.
Yeah, so anyway, um, so let's go to testing grounds 1. I want to actually delete a lot of this stuff. I was originally going to make Ultra Mix Showdown a 3D game, but I decided I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to go ahead and delete all this stuff. Decided PixArt is better. So let's put this at 0, 0. There you go. We'll use this guy. We'll keep him around. Delete. What was this about? Oh, these are other models. Yeah, we can delete this. Models. Yeah, we can delete all this. Just so I can make this my testing ground. The testing ground that I wanted. Delete this. Yeah, we can keep this. We'll call this one models. Script, materials, what is this for? Just delete this, I have no idea. And is there any script on it? There's some scripts here. But we can turn all this off so it doesn't crash. Or actually I can just delete them. Delete the scripts for now. Alright. And then there's like some other stuff going on here. Like the rendering. Let's turn some of that stuff off. None of that. Skybox. That's fine. I think everything else is fine. Oh yeah, someone's telling me that you can turn on gravity. Ah, clever girl. Anyway, so this guy's got an animation to him, right? It's pretty cool. So one of the first things that I was doing when I was learning this tool, right? One of the things I like to do whenever I'm learning anything is just, can I do basic stuff? Can I understand basic principles? You know?
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, can I like move this character? Like without any pressing any buttons, just like, can I just move it? like independently. Where's the camera at? Let's see if we can see the camera. Camera's right there. Let's change the background to there. And then let's bring the camera closer to, let's bring it to 20. Let's put it at 0. Let's put this guy right in the middle. Let's do 40. Okay. All right, so I have this guy. And if I hit play on the editor, there shouldn't be any crashes. It deleted all the things. Yeah, it should be fine. Yeah, see the little guy. Can't do anything. If I press button to click on the screen, nothing should happen. Right?
Right.
Cool. So that makes sense to me. I get that. So in their engine, they make it really cool. It's like dynamic. You can actually move this guy, and you'll see he'll move in the other window, which is cool. But not all things work like that. All right, so let's go back. So one of the first things was like, okay, how do I move stuff? So I went to their site, and you can see right here I have a lot of things already. What is this about? Yeah, I didn't mean to book this. Bookmark that. Anyway, I have like, I have the forums available. Oh, looks like somebody wrote back to me. We'll see what's up. And then, but I have developers. And see, I'm engaged in the forums. I'm like asking questions. I'm giving examples, right? Let me show you, like, for instance, one of the things. And let me see what he wrote back to. Tight controls. So I was asking, like, how can I make super tight controls? And that's why I said I know about the gravity stuff now, because that's what the answer this guy gave me. I was able to check on my phone too. I already read that. I just didn't read it on the actual site. So I wrote down like what I want. I gave my code that I wrote, and I did like a video example of what I got out of that code, just so it's like very clear, and so I can hopefully get a very clear answer. See, the problem I'm having is that when I'm like moving left to right is perfect, because in like old school 2D games, there's no sliding, okay? And the way that I was programming it so that way I can at least apply some physics, I have to use force. And if I use force, like if I push up something, it slides a little bit, It doesn't stop immediately. And if I want it to be like old school, like 2D game, the character has to stop instantly. You understand? Should uh, move at the right amount of velocity. Like as soon as I hit move, he should move or she should move at that pace. There should be no delay, right? And vice versa. Like when a character stops, it should stop. There should be no delay, you know? And when jumping, there's a little bit of the gravity, and I was asking about questions, and he mentioned some stuff about gravity and that you can actually change it. And that's the first thing I just checked right before I even went into this discussion. But look, there's like the API reference. So I've read maybe like 10% of this stuff so far. There's a lot more to read, you know? But I'm like learning it, you know? I'm like learning it day by day. Ooh, gamepads. Nice. Okay, so anyway, um, I'm just learning it, right? Step by step, day by day. You understand me?
Yeah. Yeah, and then what you need at the moment, you can always look it up.
Yes. And so I was, okay, I'm going to, just so I can learn this tool and can I do things, effectively, I will learn. So that's like, okay, first thing I need to do is learn some JavaScript. And someone even mentioned to me, watch, I can show you, like this guy, I messaged him directly. I was like, dude, you're so helpful, right? Because he is super helpful. Just wanted to thank you. So I wrote this nice thank you to this guy. And then he said that there is tutorials at Khan Academy, and I have yet to do them. But I did already 2 tutorials on Code Academy and also on Solo Learn. So I'm learning. Like he said, you should learn JavaScript. So it's okay. I'll learn JavaScript. And I even got a book that I've been reading, you know? Like I trust it because this guy's giving me answers and they work. Okay? And so then so one of the things you have to do in this editor is you got to make a script. So let's call this move this dude yo. Okay? So that way I know it's mine. There's no confusion that this is my code. Move this dude, yo. So you might not need to know anything that's going on right here. I do. I know what's going on. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this comment. I'm even going to delete the initialize. There's no need for that. Okay, so let's keep it to what I see is important and a value after my days of learning. Okay, so I looked at all this and I was just kind of confused, especially when I first started. But as I was learning JavaScript, as Steven suggested to me in the forums, now I'm starting to interpret this step by step, you know? And now I'm at a position again where I'm like, I need to go back into the books and like read even more. You know what I mean? Like I have to go back again to like the fundamentals of JavaScript and learn even more basic JavaScript. Does it make sense?
Yeah, of
It's
course.
kind of like to your question, like when should you move on to the next? Like should you have a schedule? Like I don't have one. I'm just like, man, like I know the reason why I'm struggling right now is probably because I don't have strong foundations. It's almost true for almost everything I've ever learned about anything I've ever done, you know? And so I'm at that point again. So I'm like, all right, I need to go back and read more and go back and redo all the lessons that I did before, you know, and to see if I can do them faster. Because it took me hours to do them before. Maybe I can do all of them in 1 hour, right? Anyway, so I understand what all this does. So basically what this is doing, this function right here, it's saying we're going to check what's going on in this every delta second, which is super fast. Okay? So every delta second and basically every frame, we're checking, do you want us to do something? You know? And right now, there's nothing in it. See, like in these like squiggly brackets, there's nothing in there. Imagine, like, see how this parentheses, there's a DT there? But like right here, there's nothing. That means there's no code, there's no information. So I know the language of this software. I know the syntax that they use, the API that they use, because I've been learning it. This is not JavaScript on a whole. This is specific to Play Canvas game editor. Got it? But the structure is JavaScript. You know, the language that I'm speaking is JavaScript. And so I'm like, okay, I know the API is that they have this, and I have to look for, oh wait, my daughter needs me for a second. Give me 1 moment. I need to wipe her booty. Yeah, we'll play it later. Let me finish my class today. Okay. So they, in their application too, you can see, let me zoom in here so we can see, like, you can read it. In the application, they actually help you with like they give you some tooltips. They tell you what could come next. It's great. It's nice, right? So
Yeah.
entity is what I want. So entity is the thing that I want to affect. This dot entity, this whatever this is attached to, I want you to translate the local location, okay, and then you have to give it some parameters, and when you put the parentheses, that's what is going to look inside of here, and it says, hey, this is how you should look at the parameters. You got to put a number, comma, and the numbers, what these numbers are going to affect is the x value, the y value, and the z value. Makes sense, right? It's pretty simple. So if I want it to go up, that would be the y value. So if I don't want it to go left or right, that's 0 for left or right, right? Don't do nothing. But if I want it to go up y, I want you to basically take the delta time and multiply that to whatever times I want this to go up. Let's say 5, right? Let's do 2 actually. And do I want it to go back and forth, meaning going towards us or away from us? No, I don't want to do any of that. And in JavaScript, you have to end the statement so that way it knows that there's nothing else you want this to do. Once this is done, it's going to move on to the next thing you want it to do, right? And just so we have something, we can say console.log. I'm going to say, this is not a stupid question. dude. Okay? And then once it's done doing that, it's going to stop and then move on to the next statement. But there is none, so it should just do nothing. But since this is checking every, so let's just think about this. So this is checking every delta second, right? And that means every second it's going to move this thing up by delta time times 2, okay? And then what's going to happen is that in the console, it's going to say, this is not a stupid question. And it's going to do this a lot because I'm not telling it to stop, okay? So we should see on the console, it should say, this is not a stupid question. And right next to the console should be the number that's incrementally getting larger and larger and larger, okay? Because it's just constantly going. That all make sense? And
Yeah.
and this took me a while to learn all of this stuff. But this is so simple. Like, it's like, can I just do this? You know, can I just do something as simple as this stuff and make it work confidently? And I can now, right? This is like baby stuff now. But this was like a whole day for me at one instant, you know? Just like, can I understand what's happening here? And so in the game editor, you can do something really simple. They make it really simple for you. You don't have to do a lot of coding because you just got to do some functional coding and that's it. Because everything else you can just add to stuff. So basically I can say now, move this dude, yo. So now this is the entity that's going to move. Make sense?
Yeah.
And the console log is just going to be the console log. That's irrelevant to the object that it's attached to. That's just going to happen irregardless. So before we refresh, I'm going to pop open the console. Okay. So now here's the console. See, it's an error because we just added a new function, but it doesn't know what to do with that function. So I'm going to go ahead and refresh, and once we start, this guy should slowly be moving up. Ooh, see? And he's going to go forever because I have not put any information on when and where he should stop. Okay? And look, this is not a stupid question, dude. It's going on and on and on because every delta second, it's repeating that information. You see that? So this is going to go on forever until the system crashes. You understand?
Yeah.
And that's it. That's all I wanted to learn. And then the next step was, can I control that by pressing a button? You see what I'm saying? So
Yeah, so you like find something while doing something and then you
yes.
keep learning.
So the next step would be, can I make this move? And that's when I learned if statements. So if, and I'm just going to go quickly on this so we can get back to the painting. If this app dot keyboard, hey, keyboard was, or let's do is pressed. Is pressed will mean that if I'm holding it still, keep doing it, right? PC, which is play canvas, key underscore, let's do H, because I haven't mapped anything to H, I know for that, for a fact. And then all this needs to live in its own little squiggly line. There you go. Okay, and let's just make this all orderly in space so I don't get confused. Right? Okay, there you go. So now what I'm saying is, if I'm pressing the keyboard H, this thing better go up, right? And why don't we make it, let's add some controls. So why don't we just duplicate this, okay? And instead of H, we'll put J, and instead of 2, we'll give it -2. So basically what I'm saying, we'll get rid of this console log. You should understand what's happening now, right? Like basically what I'm saying is if I press H, go up. If I press J, go down. Simple,
Yeah.
right? And so, and I'm getting rid of the console log so we don't have to worry about that. Let's get rid of that. So it should not move when we start, right? It's not moving. Now if I press H, it's going up. Let go. If I press J, it goes down. Sick. Now I'm a game maker. And so if you go to my game site that I made, Robotpencil Games, because I'm learning JavaScript and HTML and CSS, that's all related to web design. So now I actually know how to make websites by hand. I'm not very good at it yet, but I'll be able to make interactive websites soon. and I'm going to make a gamified version of my learning tools. So if you look at this game that I made, it's not really a game. It's just more like an interactive toy, like a web toy, you know?
Mm-hmm.
This was just me learning how to like make a title, learning how to put instructions, putting characters into the scene, adding a rotating camera, adding a zoom in, because all this stuff will be useful tools. Let's say if I'm trying to make something else. Make sense? And then I can
Yeah,
make
of
this
course.
guy dance and do all this stuff. And this took me like 3 or 4 weeks probably to do all this, just figure out any of this stuff out. Because they have a lot of documentation, and JavaScript, the actual coding language itself, is like absurdly documented. It's like there's so much information on there for it. So it's super easy to learn. Um, it's not super easy to learn in the sense that um, that if you just try, you're going to be expert at it. I'm just saying it's super easy to learn because there's so much information. Like almost every question is answered. So I was able to learn quite quickly, you know? And they have
Yeah.
a lot of really great books. There's one book called JavaScript in 24 Hours, for instance. So that implies that you can learn everything you need to learn in JavaScript if you just follow this book for the next 24 hours. So if you spend like a week, you should be able to be an expert, or at least more in depth. So now that I'm learning the language, I'm starting to make stuff. Like I was able to make the mechanics of my game Ultra Mech Showdown. Um, I made it work. It was easy. I mean, it wasn't easy. It took me like a day and a half, but it was possible. It's probably a better word. And so what I do, I just did exactly what I just instructed you to do. Just
Yeah.
organically move on to the next thing. And that is exactly what I did for art. It's that the problem was I wasn't necessarily super attentive to the fact that I wasn't as like when I first started, I didn't know that that's what I was doing. I too was confused. I was like, well, what is there better to do, a process or this? But now in hindsight, I have the experience and time. You know, I can look back and say, no, it is because when I would just focus in on specific problems and move on to specific answers, is how I improved fastest.
Yeah, so
Because
practically being curious and consistent are like two big factors in the learning process.
yeah, and I make a very important statement right earlier, which is uh, don't move on until you understand, right? Because if you move on, that's different. Like if you have this question and you're trying, you don't get the answer, um, then that's the wrong attitude. But if you move on, but if you have a question and you keep digging until you have a solid understanding, or at least more of an understanding, that's probably a better way of thinking about it, then that's a better process. And I think with art, it's a little more subtle and nuanced, this type of stuff, so you have to be cautious. But I would say, yeah, your suspicions were right. And I told you it was a good question.
Okay, thanks for the answer. That was helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen people online do like these schedules where they have like do this and that. And I think it's really good to have let's say a schedule, but it's not necessarily good to have like a schedule that is so rigid. Like if you were to create a schedule that says I need to learn something new today versus I need to learn specifically this, unless there's some context to it, like I said earlier, like unless you know you have something you really need to learn. Um, but if you just like make a rigid schedule that is not based on context, it's just based on like you just know you need to learn it, but there's no context to it. I think you're more likely to drop off, because you don't see the most immediate relevance to it.
Yeah.
So I hope that helps.
Yeah, it helps. Thanks.
All right, I'm gonna take on one more question, then I'm gonna go, guys. Any questions, yo? Going once? Going? Oh,
I guess I have a follow-up question then.
My wife was like, "Oh, no questions."
Yeah, it's like the auctioneers
Yeah,
going once.
she's like, "Oh, no one's gonna ask."
It's just a quick follow-up question, but
Yeah, cool.
essentially my thought is kind of combining your answer with something else you talked about a while ago with the whole metaphor of the bucket being your brain and how
Yeah.
much you can pour into it.
Yes, sir.
How much do you think you can focus on at one time in terms of um, maybe subject matter or technique
Not
or
a lot.
whatnot?
Not a lot. Like there's actually
All right.
scientific evidence too that like demonstrates that you can't, like nobody inherently can like learn many different things all at once. And history has demonstrated those who had a lot more focused on the things that they wanted to improve upon were the ones that achieved more success. Okay.
Okay.
And so this idea of like trying to learn a lot of things just stems from the just like from sense of like, you know, you want to kind of like try to find something that's going to be easier, I guess. And jumping from there to this is implying that you're going to get a lot of value out of it if you can learn that and this and that and this and that. But the reality is like, no, just stay super focused on a few things for a while, you know, not forever, just for a good bit, right? Um, until you understand it, because that idea of flip-flopping from one thing to another is a symptom of like, I call it like positive procrastination. Okay. Because instead of just like saying, oh, I just need to learn my anatomy, you're like, well, I'm going to do this too, you know? Um, you've kind of like destroyed any momentum you may have had on the other one, right? And I always diagram it like this. Like imagine like this is the time frame that two people have, okay? And then it's equal, even though I might have misdrawn one of them, right? And so let's say person A spends, or person one and person two. Person one spends his time or her time on 4 different subjects in the span of like, let's say 1 year or 2 years or whatever. It's arbitrary. Okay. So they're 25% of their time in that year is devoted to different things, right? Versus, let's say, somebody who spends all their time on one thing. Now, who would be better at B? Well, number one, right? Who would be better at C? Well, number one again. Who would be better at D? Number one again, right? But who would be better at A? Number two, without a doubt.
Yeah, leagues ahead.
Yeah, and leaps. Yeah, exactly. And so you're thinking, well, at least like I can still get those other jobs, right? Like B, C, and D. Well, no, because there's another person who is only good at B, and there's another person who's only good at C. You see what I'm saying? So you're
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
competing against not just other generalists, but also masters of those individual skills that you're being distracted by. Do you understand? Like there is a person who is only doing that one thing, you know, in
Yeah.
each respected field is what I'm trying to get at. And if you understand that, then you understand that being a generalist is not the best strategy right off the bat. That's why, like when I was doing 3D, I was originally making my game to be in 3D, right? And as I was doing it, I was just kind of like although I like it and I like 3D games, I was kind of like no, I just want to learn coding right now. Like I want to really master like making games, you know?
Hmm.
And although art is a big part of it, I don't want to make like the art the majority. I want to just code games, get them in there and learn code and make things work, you know?
Yeah, sure.
And so then I was like, I just do things in pixel art because I can paint and draw faster. Like I've mastered that, right? So the painting and designing will come to me no problem. Like take a look at this, right? I'm gonna make this dinosaur pixel art mix, right? And so I've already found a really good strategy. I just gotta down-res them. Then I got pixel art. I set up my settings so that it makes pixel art out of my images. Okay. So I'm done. Dinosaur. And then and it takes me like an hour or so. And then it takes me like another hour or two. Like a whole day I could probably get all the animations and the asset for one asset done in one day. Right? That's good. That's really good. And so the point I'm trying to make to you is that so that's where my focus is like game design, because I think there's a future in web design and game, and I want to make a game like a month pretty much until I can start making games every 2 weeks, until I can make a game every week. I want to get really good at it, rapid prototype it, so that way I can be just as good as I am at game development as I am at concept art. And the way that I did it, because I have retrospect and I've taught countless amounts of students, and I've seen that not only just works for me, works for others. So there's something there, which is constantly iterate, constantly time yourself, give yourself strict time limits, and learn the things that are contextually important to you and stay focused, right? Like, I'm not telling you this stuff because it's like pie in the sky kind of education. It's just reality. Okay. And if you want to get better at concept art, just keep that up too. And you'll see it, like in a few years, you'll get really, really good at it. And then people will ask you, like, what brush do you use? What software are you using? Like, what does you do differently that I'm not doing? Because they see you being so good now, whatever, as some sort of magic trick. But you will reveal to them, like many other great artists have revealed to me, and I revealed to myself, nah, time and effort, you know? And
Yeah,
so,
it makes sense.
to answer your question and just move on in my life, yeah, it's really important to not do so many things uh, at once. Just try to stay with a few things, and then until you feel like you've really got a good handle on them, then you can move on to something else. Sound good?
Yep, sounds great. Thanks.
Dino mix. I like them. All right, guys. I'm gonna roll out. Thanks again for a great class. You guys are amazing. I appreciate all of you. With that being said, make sure to talk and hang out with one another. Use the not GoToMeetings, Skype, and use Discord to chat with other artists and share your work and get better and better over time, y'all. Appreciate you. Have a good weekend. Laters. Thank you for watching this video. I appreciate it. Please subscribe to watch more in the future. If you liked the video, I would appreciate a thumbs up. If you like this content, you can go to my website, robotpencil.net, where you can find mentorships, tutorials, and a Patreon to get more exclusive content. Thanks again, and I'll see you guys in my next videos.